calling to order the regular bi-monthly meeting of the Marin Water Board of Directors for January 19th, 2021. And I am looking for a roll call, I guess.
Director Bragman.
Present.
Director Gibson.
Here.
Director Schmidt.
Present.
And President Kohler.
Here. We now need to adopt the agenda. I assume this is a roll call vote. I mean, not a roll call. Yeah. I mean, I assume we need a motion. Okay, so I need a motion to adopt the agenda
So moved.
Second.
and roll call.
Director Bragman.
Aye.
Director Gibson.
Aye.
Director Schmidt.
Aye.
And President Kohler.
Aye. Okay, I am now convening to close session.
Terry, could you forward Director Russell the invite? But I think we can still go right to closed session and let him in, Molly.
We can. It's a little tricky. I'll have to. Typically, what happens is we have everybody leave and then we lock the meeting so that no one can join. So we would want to leave the meeting open, but that means anyone could join. So we sort of only have those.
No,
two.
got it. Got it. I know he's trying to. Terry, did you?
Yeah.
were you
I
able
just
to-
resent it. To him. And then what I'll do is, Molly, I'm going to make you the host.
Okay,
There he is.
great.
Oh, actually, before I do that,
You're gonna
is it
pause.
okay if I leave the closed captioning on? Or should I pause it?
Fine with me. I don't know if it
Sure.
is concerning.
Okay. All right, I'm going to go ahead, Molly, and make you the host then.
Okay, thank you.
And then will you please stop the recording?
I will.
Or do you want me to do that?
I can do that. I'm gonna
Okay.
do it now.
Back. Let me unpause it. All right. Who would like to do the closed session report out? Or
I can report, President Kohler, that there was nothing to report out for closed session.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And this is the moment when we are, I'm sorry, do we have public participants, Terry?
we have attendees, but let me see if anyone wants to speak. No, no one has raised their hands for public comment.
All right, that being the case, then we are there any directors or general managers announcements?
Don't we need to adopt the agenda first?
We did that in we did that before the closed session.
Oh,
So
the
we are
whole-
now in our new time frame that allows us to have a regular meeting as early as 6 p.m. So we didn't
Right.
have two separate agendas, one special and one
Right,
Okay.
sorry,
regular. So
Okay.
sorry, that's where that's coming
Okay.
from.
right. I am just slavishly following the agenda.
Okay. I have a
So,
question for staff, which is, did we have any power interruptions last night?
I don't believe so. Paul, do you know?
Yeah, we did have, I think, a couple outages in Sausalito,
Okay.
but nothing meaningful with respect to our operations.
Just wind, Paul, or PSPS stuff?
Wind, yeah.
Yeah, it blew pretty hard here.
Yeah, it was 66 miles an hour on Loma Alta.
Yeah.
So it was blowing.
okay. Any other directors' announcements or questions? Seeing none, Ben, do you have any general managers announcements?
I don't have any this evening, Director Kohler.
All right, then I'm looking for a motion to adopt the consent calendar.
Motion to adopt. Second.
And roll call vote, please.
Director Bragman,
Aye.
Director Gibson,
Aye.
Director Russell,
Aye.
Director Schmidt,
Aye.
and President Kohler.
Aye. That brings us to item 2. I'm looking for a motion to approve the minute. Oh, sorry, no. Item 2 is, I'm sorry, that's on the consent calendar. I have item 5, the water supply report for December.
Could I just ask on the general manager's report, Ben, could you send us or circulate, sorry, It's the WR 95 report that was
Yeah.
submitted to the state.
Sure. I'll get that. Well, I'll send that to the board. Sure.
Okay. And I don't know, I don't want to, drag the meeting on, but I'm interested in the youth to work contract. So,
What we can, well, why don't, when I send the other one, I'll have a little brief summary so the whole board sees it, the status of that as well.
okay. I'm sorry I missed that on consent. Sorry. Thanks, Ben.
Great, thanks for raising it, Larry. I appreciate it. So with that, are we on for the water supply report?
We are. Good evening, Paul Cellier, Operations Director, and I will see if I can share my screen. Okay, there we go. Yeah, good evening. So tonight, water supply report for December, and adding to that, we'll be taking a look at some of the activities that staff have been up to and what we're calling at this point our sort of drought action plan. As I say, water supply report for 2020, and we're going to look at our demand and production numbers and take a peek at taste and odor numbers and get into some storage projections for different levels of rainfall, and then we'll touch on our activities as far as a drought action plan goes. Without further ado, the water supply report, we usually start off with taste and odor, and here December's taste and odor, you see we still have lingering taste and odors. We've got 10 in December, and other than last year, it's been a very unusual time for us to have this continue. We are closely monitoring it, and we're going to stay on top of it to the best we can. Looking at
Move on to the taste and odor. I know that there's challenges with communicating with the public on Nextdoor, but if there's any way that we could do some posts about that, because there's a fair amount of conversation on Nextdoor about taste and odor issues still.
Okay, we'll revisit that. We have done some in the past, but we can do that. Not a problem.
Thank you.
That's a great idea.
We do, when we're aware of it, we do try to get with Jeannie and ask her to do some targeted messaging, because we know roughly where these events are happening. So with that, our reservoir storage finished December at about 76% of average storage for that date. That represents 45,700 or so acre feet in the reservoirs. Comparing that to today, or as of yesterday rather, we're at 44,784 acre feet, and we're at about 70% of average. So that number from average is dropping as it continues to be dry weather, and this is our rainy period. Representing that another way is our chart here showing our progress since last July in the green line, and our slow sort of consumption of water throughout the dry period. And this is where we left off December, at the end of December, and the red star there represents sort of where we are today. So if you like, there is a sort of slight flattening of this curve. Of course, we would love to see it turn direction, and that will happen if we get some rain. Our monthly water production for December was up slightly from the previous year, and that's really, it's just been a dry December. That coupled with, if you recall, our COVID lockdown after Thanksgiving extending through Christmas, I think is partly to explain that. Focusing then on the second table below, you'll notice the bottom right-hand number here, 734 acre feet of imported water. That's higher than we've had in the last 5 years. So we're keeping up our commitment to the board to continue our purchases of supplemental water to the maximum extent that we can. Looking at production in chart form, if you prefer that, again, you see December is slightly higher than the previous December, but it is, of course, lower than November of this year. Today, again, our storage, 44,784 acre feet as of yesterday. That represents 70.3% of average. Looking to the north at our partners in Lake Sonoma, very similar in terms of average. This data is about a week behind where we're at, so I imagine it's really a little bit closer than even the 73%. The two lakes are tracking their averages fairly closely. Getting into our projections, this is where we start to look forward. But of course, if we turn back time and go back to January of last year, where we were at 70,000 acre feet of water, and we see our rainy season, we actually increased from there slightly, and then we hit a dry spell. And you can see that by declining reservoir levels as we get all the way through to January of this year. Our projections that you're familiar with by now, I've added one line, and that's this sort of brown or orange line at the bottom. This represents 25% of average rainfall. So that would be the runoff that would go into the reservoir from 25% of average rainfall. The blue line representing 50% of average rainfall, green being average, and purple being 150% of average. And let's think that the purple line is an exaggeration. Really, when you look at our storage curves, there are some really incredible rises in storage as a result of rainfall. Sometimes 20, 30,000 acre feet of water in the matter of just a few weeks. So it can do this sort of a rapid rise in a very short period of time. So looking at our 10-day outlook, it does appear that maybe some rain showing up on Sunday. And then next week, if things continue to develop, next week, Tuesday, we'll be looking at maybe 1.5 inches of rain. So that's promising. So maybe some rain towards the end of the month. And that concludes our December, looking at December and a quick peek at our projections. So in previous water supply reports, I'd been, sort of indicating that staff had been doing a little work behind the scenes. And this is just a preview of that. Now we're calling a drought action plan. And there are 3 key elements to this. One is what we can do operationally. The other, of course, is what we can do to conserve. And of course, none of that can happen without communication and a consistent communication. So we're going to touch on those 3 areas. And firstly, hitting the operational actions. Again, supplemental water is a big part of our water portfolio, and we're pursuing that to the extent that we can. It looks like we'll be able to get in an additional 2,000 acre feet this fiscal year. And then over the summer, where capacity is somewhat limited, it'll be somewhat challenging to get extra water throughout that time, but maybe an additional 1,000 acre feet through the calendar year. So a total of 3,000 acre feet extra that we would maybe be able to get between now and the end of the year. In order to fit that water, right now, we're of course in wintertime, right? Our demands are quite low. So our demand is about 16 million gallons a day, and we're presently taking 10 million gallons a day through the intertide from the north. In order to fit that water, if you like, into our system, we've got to turn our treatment plants way down. And so Bontempi is currently operating at 1 million gallons a day and San Geronimo at 4.5 million gallons a day. So this sort of system reconfiguration allows us to make room for that extra supplemental water. Because we're taking 10 million gallons of water from the north every day, that really is consuming the entire gravity capacity in the North Marin Aqueduct. There is no additional water. If we were to try to put water into Stafford, that 10 million gallon number would be reduced. So there just isn't the possibility at this point to add water to Stafford and to take the 10 million gallons. And it's better for us, I think, to utilize the water directly rather than putting it into Stafford.
Paul?
Yep.
Wouldn't it make sense to start moving Sulahuli water over?
Well, you're jumping 2 slides ahead.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, you're right. Absolutely. Here we are at Sulahuli. Yeah, one of the things that we're going to do, of course, Sulahuli water isn't going anywhere at this point, so we can afford to wait a little bit until.
No, but if it were to rain, it would be nice to have the storage space available, in that reservoir. If it's full, all it's going to do is spill.
Right.
So-
Well, as you recall, we've been releasing water for the fish all summer.
Of course.
So we've got about 4,000 acre feet of space, if you like, available already.
Okay.
But no, it's a good point.
And what's the
And
capacity of Sulahuli?
about 10,000 acre feet.
Oh, so a substantial chunk of it, huh?
Yeah. So pumping Sulahuli, and of course that means generator rental and fueling. And, that's an undertaking that we're ready to, and we know how to take on. It just requires a little bit of coordination.
We remember. We remember.
So you'll be seeing that contract coming through fairly shortly. And of course, we do want to touch base with our regulatory partners, the State Board, Division of Drinking Water, and of course, CDF and W, the Fish and Wildlife folks with whom we have a collaborative agreement to operate this reservoir to support the fishery below Sulahuli. Other things we can do and would like to do in Phoenix Lake, of course, this is not a huge volume of water, but it's a really high traffic area, maybe one of our highest traffic areas. I haven't asked Sean, but I wouldn't be surprised. And so if we draw this lake down 10, 15 feet or so, it really would create a dramatic visual for everyone walking around the reservoir, just to serve as a reminder that we are in dry weather, and it would just be a sort of a present reminder in front of everybody as they walk around the lake.
I think it's a great idea.
Other things we can do, looking at, our friends to the north at Sonoma, their temporary urgency change petition has become almost a matter of habit. On the other hand, here at MMWD, we have never done this. And we, looking at it from numbers perspective, it makes sense to look at it because the Kent stream release can require up to 10,000 acre feet of year that comes straight out of the reservoir if it doesn't rain. We have to provide that stream flow. On the other hand, we would want to come at this from a position of knowledge. And because we haven't done it, really this is at the feasibility stage where we want to discuss with the state board, looking at our order and consulting with experts, and then understanding what the environmental considerations are for this option before we would bring this back to the board. Continuing then with operational actions, we're looking at Castania Pump Station. If you recall, a few slides ago, I mentioned we were taking 10 million gallons a day from the north, and it's by gravity. If we can rehabilitate this pump station, there's a potential for an additional 350 acre feet per month, or 4 million gallons of water per day. Our engineering group under Mike Bond is undertaking the condition assessment, and they'll come back again with more information as to what's needed in terms of civil mechanical work and what CEQA will need to do in order to make that happen. And we're hoping to be back to the board in May. And then continuing again with things that we can do, we're suspending our water system flushing program, and we're going to take a look at our, leak backlog and just sort of have that under our thumb so that if the dry weather continues to hold, even these maybe smaller actions, we can consider a reallocation of staffing to go attack these leaks in a little bit more aggressive manner. So with that, I'm going to hand this over to Carrie, and I will continue clicking the slides for her. So please forgive me if I don't get the timing perfect.
Thank you, Paul. Good evening, board. So I'm going to cover our drought response. So some actions we've already taken and that are underway. We're going to look at some short-term actions and then jump into some longer-term planning that we've been working on. Thank you, Paul. So currently underway, so acknowledging that there's been a lack of rainfall, and this is a really great opportunity for us to engage our customers and increase their water awareness. Jeannie and the communications team have started a campaign around lack of rainfall. And they've been tying that to a conservation counts campaign. So you can see that hashtag in all of their posts and all of the social media they've been pushing out. The target for this conservation counts campaign is really promoting the water restrictions that we have on the book. So this is the watering days and watering times, and also giving folks an opportunity to acknowledge that there's things they can do that don't have a significant impact. So turn off the water when they're brushing their teeth, take shorter showers, you know, turn off the water when they're shaving, all those sorts of kind of easy ways to kind of ease them into this idea that, you know, we haven't had much rain and we want them to be aware. As Paul noted, that we're not alone in this, you know, it's a regional issue. And so we are coordinating the dry winter messaging with the Sonoma Marin Saving Water Partnership and of course, North Marin Water District. And we'll continue that coordination as we progress, you know, into what may be a drought. Finally, with incentives, we continue to communicate with, or continue to coordinate with communications to make sure that all of our rebates and the incentives that are available for customers are being pushed out. So not only are we asking them to be aware of their water use and to take action, but also to remind them of incentives and rebates we have available to support them in those actions. Next slide. Thank you. So as far as short-term actions, we are looking for planning for and looking forward to potentially calling for a voluntary reduction. We'll cover that in a little bit, I think. Really where that voluntary reduction is going to fall, where our push is going to be, is around compliance with our water waste prohibition. So we're really fortunate the district has a number of water waste prohibitions on the books that we can leverage during these times around education and ensuring that customers know when they should be irrigating, which is really going to get us our biggest win once irrigation really picks up. Looking at increasing our weekly watering schedule marketing. So that means, you know, getting more people to sign up for that weekly watering schedule and really promoting it on a broader scale, because we want people to, you know, maintain their landscapes as efficiently as possible while following the restricted days and watering times that we do have on the books. And so we'll be looking forward to that. Part of these voluntary reductions, of course, would include things like using hose and shut-off nozzles, so, you know, at the end of your hose, anytime you're using your garden or a utility hose. The district provides these for free, in addition to shower heads and faucet aerators, dye tabs, etc. And we're working closely with communications to put together conservation kits that'll include, you know, a shut-off nozzle as requested by a customer, and then also some tips and additional information on programs they can participate in. Acknowledging that an increase in education around the water waste prohibitions in our codes will result in more water waste reports, right? Customers will start seeing their neighbors watering midday, and we want to make sure that we have a clear and you know, plan for responding to all those calls. So we're updating our reporting, tracking, and response internally to ensure that all of those reports can be handled appropriately. We'll continue to work with communications on tips, fact sheets, and providing technical support to them. You know, Jeannie's team is amazing at, you know, pushing out the right message, and we just want to work with them to ensure that those tips will help get us to the reduction that we're looking for. And finally, we're preparing for additional restrictions, you know, pending water supply conditions. We see some rain in the forecast, but we also want to make sure that we are planning ahead for where we may need to go with additional restrictions. We're going to jump into next slide, please. Thank you. So I just wanted to briefly cover some of the prohibitions that we do have on the books. I think it's a good opportunity for us all to kind of look at them and just, you know, remember what we've got. A lot of them are around landscaping, which is great. It's our peak demand. So landscape irrigation between the hours of 9 a.m. and 7 p.m. is prohibited. It's an easy way to think about this is when the sun's up, you know, you don't want to irrigate. It's really tied to evaporation. Irrigating of landscapes, you know, turf or any kind of landscape, more than 3 days a week is prohibited. And so these top two are really going to be the ones we start pushing out to our customers. Irrigating turf along a street median is actually prohibited. So this is really tied more to our cities that have street medians that they maintain and some HOAs. So we can do some outreach around that. Irrigation should not cause any runoff or overspray. You can see that in the picture, which is a violation. And then finally, irrigating when there's any rainfall or you know, 1/4 inch or more of rainfall is actually prohibited. That's a state requirement that we've incorporated. There are some prohibitions around restaurants and lodging. Fully acknowledge it right now during COVID. All of this is pretty much shut down for the most part. But once restrictions start being lifted around COVID, we will look at this as an opportunity to reach out to our local restaurants and lodging establishments to support them in these requirements. Next slide. And finally, there's a handful of other prohibitions that we do have on the books around pool covers for outdoor swimming pools, non-circulating decorative fountains be prohibited. This is a big one, is washing sidewalks, walkways and driveways, parking lots, etc. We only will allow that for health and safety reasons. Another one we have on the books is repairing leaks within 48 hours, which is really important. I think leaks are a big opportunity for us to increase water efficiency, but also save folks some money on their water bill. And there's also requirements around single pass cooling, car washes, and reverse osmosis purifying systems. So all these are fairly, site specific. And so really, we'll focus probably more on the landscaping and just, pool covers possibly and washing of sidewalks. But we do want to acknowledge that these are all in the books. Next slide. Thank you.
Hey,
And
Carrie,
then,
before you get
yeah.
to long-term actions, can I just ask, can you just review what the incentives are that you currently have in place? I saw and I'm sorry if I missed it, you sort of talked about how you're coordinating with comms about them. Can you just what the current incentives actually are and for whom? I assume they're
Yes.
mostly residential, but I think you've also got some for CII.
They are mostly residential. We have, starting with landscape, so we have a turf rebate of $1 per square foot. We also have a mulch delivery program to assist customers who want to remove their lawn on their own and do sheet mulching. We have a smart irrigation controller program. So we have a $100 rebate for a smart irrigation controller. And then we also are just launching the Ratio program. I think it'll start in the next 2 weeks or so, which we're really excited about, which folks can get a discounted Ratio irrigation controller directly from Ratio. We have a rain barrel and cistern rebate, which is 50 cents per gallon, and a gray water incentive for installation of gray water kits. We also provide free shower heads, faucet aerators, dye tabs, etc. It's just customers just need to reach out to our conservation staff. We'll be happy to mail them or coordinate delivery if needed. And I believe that is all of them, although I'm probably missing something. They're all on our website, thoroughly outlined on our website. So of course, you can go there and check them out as well.
Thanks. I just wanted to make sure we were all up to date on that. Thanks.
Okay. So long-term action. So we are planning ahead, looking at what mandatory restrictions could be put in place if needed as if this dry weather continues. It would include increased enforcement of the prohibition. So this would, potentially look at waterways patrols and, having field staff out in the field and doing door hangers. We really want to focus it be more on education, right? Most people don't want to, waste water. They don't want to be that neighbor who has their sprinklers running in the middle of the day. So, we really would focus on the education piece and helping bring them along in increasing their efficiency and not wasting water. We limit non-essential uses. So power washing was a big one during the last drought that continued to come up. And so we would address that up front. And of course, pool filling would be something that would not be allowed as well. These would be considered non-essential uses. And then we would progress to, escalated landscape restrictions. Of course, this is not something we would jump right into. We would look at water supply conditions and, potential rainfall as much as we can before we actually call for landscape restrictions, but we fully acknowledge that, we may need to go there. And of course, we would be bringing this back to the board for your support as we progress through these into any mandatory restrictions as well. And with that, I believe that was my last slide. Yes, I'll turn it over to Jeannie and she can cover the communications piece.
Thanks, Carrie. For communications, we'll go through some of our outreach now underway to support conservation, keep customers informed, and educate our community on what they can do to help us manage our supply through conservation. Then we'll also touch on some next level communications that Carrie talked a little bit about here as we monitor drought conditions. Next slide, please. So our website is an important tool for us. Conservation content is front and center on our homepage. You can see there our conservation counts campaign that Carrie mentioned earlier. We also created a new landing page that serves as a hub for our drought-related conservation messaging. And if Paul will advance that, you'll get a look at that. So that includes things like indoor and outdoor conservation tips, information on reporting water waste. You can learn about our water code there. And you can track our storage levels or download resources, such as some of our conservation brochures on this new landing page. Next slide. We've also ramped up our social media messaging. So if you follow us on social media, you'll see that conservation is in fact a consistent part of our overall messaging. We provide followers with water saving tips and tools, of course, information about rebates, and we're using more video as well to help boost engagement. So when we move into the next phase, we'll look at more sponsored content and broadening that reach. Next slide, please. So for the past year, conservation and water efficiency information has been part of all of our customer newsletters that go in the bills. And the current newsletter going out now in January and February focuses on conservation during drought conditions. All of our newsletters also have information about our reservoir storage. Slide. So as we track conditions and monitor our supply, we're also preparing for taking our program to the next level. And some of what you can expect to see is an expanded communications and media campaign, of course. And that includes increasing frequency of our messaging, broadening our audience and reach through digital and traditional advertising, and working closely with some of our community partners and the media to help get our messages out. Carrie mentioned that typically our customers can come into our offices and get the shut-off nozzles or conservation materials, but with the COVID pandemic, staff is working on creating those conservation kits that she mentioned. So that would have things like the shut-off nozzles, maybe shower timers, as well as educational materials for kids to help keep conservation part of the conversation. So we're also looking at developing, as part of that effort, videos and virtual workshops based on water efficiency. So in summary, assuming dry conditions hold, we're looking at a resolution to the board in February for stage 1 voluntary conservation actions. Of course, closely monitoring the weather, and we'll continue to work on supply projects that Paul mentioned. And we'll be bringing regular updates to the board so that we can keep you informed on everything that's happening here. So that concludes our presentation, and we're all happy to take any questions.
Great. Maybe I'll just start with one for you, Jeannie. I love the focus on social media and and engaging more actively on the website. Can you, not today necessarily, but could you provide us sometime soon with what the analytics are looking like? Because the new website, I never get tired of saying how great I think it is, but it'd be really interesting, I think, for the board and the public to hear some of your analytics on performance.
That's perfect. We'll do that. And with the new website, we have much better analytics, so we can actually look and see how much time people are spending on certain parts of the site. So we're happy to make that part of our next update.
Yeah, so you've totally anticipated where I'm going. So where people are spending time and also where they're going. I assume they're mostly on the homepage. I assume it's a lot of people on the bill page, but I think it's really helpful for the board, and I'll let the rest of you speak for yourselves, but also for the public to really get a sense of, what are people really, how are people engaging with the website, and what are our expectations about where they're spending time, how much is that comporting with, your actual experience.
Will do, yeah, absolutely.
Great. And then my other question is for Carrie. Were you going to be coming forward to the board with any proposals to expand the rebates that are currently being offered? Or are you feeling like where we're at is a good place?
At this point, I think where we are is a good place. And I think that as we continue to progress, we can definitely, we will take that into consideration as needed. But right now, I think we're at a good place.
Okay, thanks. Other board questions on this item? This set of items, Larry.
I appreciate the analytics from the website, but I think as far as outreach, that's sort of a self-selecting group. And I do think we need more conventional outreach. I mentioned last time, the sides of buses, things like that, that just puts it in people's faces, what we're dealing with. And then the other thing is when we did the rate increase, we talked about doing outreach to some of the schools about helping them reduce their use. And I don't know if that's kind of gone by the board because of COVID, but I know some of the towns could use some help. And you mentioned, medians and that type of thing. And I try to do some outreach to Fairfax, but I think they're probably pretty big consumers, pretty big customers. And I think what I would also like to see us just do an affirmative outreach to our municipal customers and our public entity customers, because we may be able to get some savings there that, are pretty low hanging fruit.
Right, great idea. Thank you.
Any other board comments, questions? Do we have any public comments or questions on this item, Terry?
There are no hands raised at this time.
Okay.
Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Yes, Mr. Roger Roberts.
I would be disappointed if that did not happen. Hi, Roger. You need to unmute.
Can you hear me now?
We can.
I may have missed it, but does the water district have any incentives for people to mulch their yards, which will reduce irrigation requirements?
We have programs for folks to remove their lawn and add mulch. So if they have mulch, we can put, if they have lawn that they want to take out, we can provide mulch to them. Otherwise, we do not just have a mulch incentive. So it's really around lawn removal. But Roger, you feel free to reach out to me at Conservation at Marine Water and we can get some more information to you.
Well, it seems to me that that's a natural for people to mulch their yards and gardens particularly. And if you don't have a system for providing mulch incentives, maybe that's something you ought to do.
Thank you for that. I think we will definitely be taking all recommendations like that under consideration. Any other public comment on this item?
We do not.
Okay. Moving on then to item 6. This is the COVID district leave program. We're extending it apparently.
Good evening, board and meeting attendees. I'm Vicki Gray with the Human Resources Department. And with respect to item number 6, staff recommends that the board approve an extension of the Marin Municipal Water District COVID leave program. This will allow the district to pay employees who are on qualifying leave at their regular rate and also provide us the opportunity to provide retro payments for those employees who are currently on leave during the expiration of this program. So the program expired on December 31st, and if approved, retro payments would be given to employees effective today if approved. So the district, and this program was in compliance with the Families First Coronavirus Response Act. So the district created a program to ensure that we met the requirements of FFCRA. Both the district's program and FFCRA provide emergency paid sick leave related to COVID, leave for care if an employee needs to take care of someone who is sick with COVID or isolating because of COVID, leave for childcare needs related to COVID school closures, related to COVID, school closures related to COVID, excuse me. And so on December 27th, both of those programs expired on the 31st, as I said. And on December 27th, the Consolidated Appropriations Act was signed, and that legislation allows for employers to voluntarily extend their COVID leave program through March 31st. And so the district would like to continue to support employees during this pandemic by extending the program through March 31st. We believe the program has been instrumental in helping us to prevent outbreaks and spread among our staff. And as this would be an extension, employees who have exhausted their leave under the program would not receive additional leave. So it was just be an extension of what started in March of 2020 as we approach March 2021. The fiscal impact for this program based on assumptions would be $60,000 approximately for the 3-month program. And so staff recommends that the board approve an extension of the Marin COVID leave program through March 31st.
Thanks, Vicki. Can you give us a sense of how many, again, respecting everybody's privacy, roughly how many Marin employees are currently taking advantage and that you would expect would take advantage of this program going forward?
So we've been in this program for 10 months now, and we've had 48 employees participate in the program. But again, it's a combination of sick, isolating, and also childcare.
Right, right. Well, I mean, it's a great thing that we're doing, and I think we absolutely need to support our team. Any board comments on this item?
I just would note that's about 25% of the workforce. So it's affecting a large percentage of folks. So.
Yeah. Yeah. Do we have any public comments on this item before I call for a motion, Terry?
There are no public comments.
Okay, I need a motion.
So moved.
Second.
All right, roll call vote, please.
Director Bragman,
Aye.
Director Gibson,
Aye.
Director Russell,
Aye.
Director Schmidt,
Aye.
and President Kohler.
Item 7 is we're going to hear an update on the retreat.
Thank you.
Okay, this is my item I'm bringing. This is going to be, we can, well, just hold on to this page. This works. This is going to be fairly brief. I'm going to run through an update on the items we brought with the intention to keep the retreat kind of a year long, keep it in our focus and not have it be a good day that's a one-off. And also for staff to hold ourselves to what we talked about and said we would try to accomplish. So I was intending to run through very quickly all the slides and have questions at the end, but if during it, feel free, of course, to just jump in if you have a question and don't want to wait. I'm not going to read all these because they all have their discrete slides, so I'll just roll through it. Much of these is information you've heard quite a lot about, so I won't go into details on those. And in fact, many of those we talked about tonight. So 10-year financial plan, of course, we've done workshop 1A and 1B, and we expect the subsequent 3 workshops through spring with a final plan in July, with the understanding this is a living document that gives kind of a foundation for future planning in terms of priorities and investments in our system. The water system master plan, this is that rather large effort that we initiated a number of months back, looking at really the entire system, distribution, transmission system. There's been a lot of work to date. We're planning next month to provide an update at the operations committee, and looking at approximately June, we'll bring that component of the Ross Valley evaluation and pre-design report in review with the board. Recommendations in terms of Ross Reservoir, Pine Mountain Tunnel, one or the other combination, sizing, locations, and begin those discussions. Long-term water supply, again, we talked about this. The near-term activities, of course, range of water efficiency activities. There's a slide on that I'll touch on, reiterate what you've really heard a lot tonight, and the Castagna pump station you also heard, and we're hoping to bring back in May the initial feasibility of what it's going to take. Water efficiency, I mean, there really is so much going on. The incentives we talked about, the school program, that was mentioned tonight, with the addition of taking a look at our municipal partners out there, the AMI pilots that we have going on, that we're installing and assessing and understanding that system better and utilizing it where we have it. There's the urban water management plan, with the key element of a water shortage plan that we have to develop, that has all the, I think on here, the next slide will go into that a bit more. And I also, of course, there's all the drought planning you just heard from Carrie. Upcoming, I wanted to just note that we will be bringing to the board a discussion on higher investment levels, what that would look like in terms of water efficiency and conservation that came out of the board input during the 10-year financial plan discussions. And then the residential gray water initiative, we're really looking at, as COVID begins to wrap up, kicking off a rather significant initiative on gray water. Drought planning, as I noted, the urban water management plan, with the water shortage contingency plan being part of it, which includes a mandated 6 triggers, and we'll develop actions associated with the triggers. And there's really a whole regulatory set of requirements. And over the next, we're planning to have this in place by June. So the board will be seeing different elements of that as staff develop it, to get your feedback. And of course, the ongoing work with the current drought conditions. Was not anticipated back in September, but here we find ourselves. We've also talked to the board about the Watershed Recreation Plan, this comprehensive plan that looks at recreational activities and management actions to protect both the different user groups and potential conflicts that we see and we talk about quite a bit, with a focus on maintaining and enhancing, in context of the recreation, the biodiversity of the watershed. And we're currently beginning kind of scoping out, and this is new for us, understanding what a plan like that would look like, talking with various stakeholder groups about it, and we'll be bringing back some thoughts to the board in the spring. Safety and emergency response, 2 very key issues. The safety program, I had noted, is essentially being completely refurbished, and we've made a lot of success, noting there are some key deficiencies that we are focused on trying to knock out. Hot work, confined space, lone workers, it's all very, very important, and it's getting a lot of attention. Emergency response, again, developing a new emergency response plan that recognizes we have a lot of new players, and really developing this with all of our experience and knowledge. For example, incorporating not just the earthquake scenario that's always been kind of the key planning event, but also having wildfires be integrated into that, so we can respond to either natural disaster that may occur. Recently, wanted to know, we did deploy a dedicated communication system that's very important, that allows us, were something to happen, messages can go out to the appropriate folks, letting people know who needs to come in, who's on the second shift, and that sort of critical communication that happens immediately following our knowledge that one of these events has happened or is starting. And our goal on this is to have a fully established program by the end of the calendar year 2021, where we're just in a kind of ongoing training mode. So that's a very important milestone for us and for me.
That's good.
Employee engagement, a number of things to some extent, you know, with Zoom and COVID is not, but we continue to think about our key asset, the staff of the organization. The board adopted an enhanced commuter benefit program that obviously is not being used much at all right now, but once we get past the pandemic, we expect staff to highly value that. We're updating personnel policies, like all our policies need updating and refreshing. And after we have a draft, we loop in the union, get their comments. So it's a very collaborative process. We have a health and wellness program, just noting that during the pandemic, there's been a focus of information and webinars and how you manage kind of emotionally during the pandemic. That for folks that have used it, I believe it's been helpful. We're kicking off a DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion initiative. It's just, a small initial effort, and we'll have a group from across the district to engage with an expert to understand where there may be opportunities to think differently, whether that is hiring and recruitment, how we talk and engage with each other. I've been through some of this in other, wearing other hats, many of us may have. And, there's a lot of value, not just where you go, but in the discussion of this sort of effort. And today, to add to this, we've extended the COVID leave program. Again, thinking about our staff, engaging our staff, demonstrating the value that our staff has to us, to management and the board. The new website, great work putting that together, getting that launched in November. We've gotten some positive feedback, and work continues. It always will, refining the site, including enhancing search features, automating some of our features, and key landing pages and the like. So it's an ongoing, and it will be continuous improvement process. And then lastly, sustainability. We're certainly continuing efforts on sustainability on a range of activities: fiscal sustainability with a 10-year plan, watershed stewardship and sustainability, BIFA, the forestry work, water supply sustainability, water efficiency conservation, Castagna Pump Station. And then in addition to the above, with a focus on climate change, we were able to get the grant that we had brought to the board with UC Davis on microturbines, and we're finalizing the agreement. It's taken a bit longer than I'd hoped, but two bureaucracies, you're working with the whole UC system on these sorts of agreements, but that should be getting underway very soon. We're looking at kind of targeted enhancements of our solar energy program. There were comments on thinking about, which we're doing, solar on our large water tanks and the like. And we continue to be active with regional and community groups on climate change, such as Drawdown Marin. So quite a lot of activities going on. There's always more we can do, and I know there's interest of the board in this, so interested in comments on the whole thing, but specifically here if you have any. And then in summary, again, this annual retreat, opportunity to engage senior staff and the board to refine, refresh organizational priorities, but also keeping them front and center through the year. And work is progressing on all of these, as you just saw, in addition, of course, to just the ongoing routine work. Did I say just? I shouldn't, because that's really quite a workload, and a range of other priorities that aren't identified, but right, we have the drought, we're working on e-bikes. I mean, the list goes on. And some have progressed a little slower than anticipated, maybe the safety and emergency response program, due to reasons. And, COVID did take a fair chunk of time and continues with our safety manager who works with HR as new regulations come out, new orders come out, staff issues come up. So that's taken just a bit of time and eaten into the progress on safety and emergency response. But overall, I'm feel pretty good about where we are. But with that, open it up to questions on any of this. Hopefully I didn't throw too much out without pausing.
Thanks, Ben. That was very comprehensive. I have two quick thoughts that I'd like to hear you talk a little bit more about. The microturbines project is interesting. I don't remember it. I mean, I sort of vaguely remember the contract with UC Davis, but is there a particular technology or particular company that you're working with? Because I hear pretty frequently about the whole microturbine sector. And so I'm just curious about how that's being structured and how that's, just substantively, what's that going to look like for the district?
Yeah, well, we've looked at this a number of different times in different ways with specific service providers in terms of what a partnership would look like. We had an effort underway with Marin Clean Energy that seemed to have faltered. I don't want to judge the reason, but we were hopeful that would move forward. This is, in a way, kind of taking a step back and taking a look at our entire system, identifying all the areas where there's opportunities for microturbines, and developing a short list and an action plan and bringing that to the board, and with the intention of, where's this fit in overall priorities, but it is kind of low-hanging fruit, right, in terms of renewable energy. And, we are not of the size where hydropower is a big play, but this is, I know of high interest to the board and the community, and being able to generate some renewable energy on an ongoing basis from where we have excess energy in our system with these microturbines seems like the right thing to understand fully.
Well, I'm excited about that. So it'll be interesting to see where that goes. The other thing I wanted to pull out, you went by it fast, is the district's initiative on diversity, equity, and inclusion. I'm really delighted to see that that's something that's now becoming more tangible and that you're going forward with. Can you describe for us what your goals are for that?
The goal of this effort is to have a kind of cross-sectional work group working with this expert to identify and recommend to management and ultimately to the board where there's opportunities in this organization. And, I think something like this, that's a good way to go, because it's kind of a grassroots driven initiatives. And there's certainly opportunities, at least I believe, and I noted, as we recruit, how do we think about, are there partners in areas of Marin that we can link with in terms of getting the word out when we have job openings, but also thinking about helping us to think about how we just communicate with staff, among staff, and what is the, we're all learning and growing, and as an organization, we want to as well, in terms of how best to demonstrate kind of respectful relationships, understanding people come with different perspectives, different biases, different views, different backgrounds, and, just engaging slowly the organization in that type of conversation, but starting smaller and letting that grassroots push this up through the organization.
Great. Any other board comments on this item?
It's a pretty impressive list. It really is, especially considering COVID. So really appreciate your efforts to keep the ball rolling. It's pretty amazing, really.
Yeah. It takes some, and these things really do. So yeah, thank you.
Okay, seeing no further comments, and thank you again. I really agree with Larry. It is an extraordinary set of initiatives. I think that brings us to future agenda items.
Good evening. So there are no changes from what was reported or stated in the staff report. Next week, we'll have the Finance and Administration Committee meeting at 9:30. And then we'll have the next regular board meeting, February 2nd. And then right following that is the February 16th board meeting. And then that's it, unless you have any changes or additions.
I do not. Any board comment on this? Any public comment on this item?
There are none.
Great, then I think we are adjourned. Have a nice night, everybody.
Okay.
Right.
Um,
Good night.
Care.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Night.